It's Hollie's Hotspurs back with another one. Chatting all things Tottenham, we're second to none. Special guests every time, if it's win, lose or draw. The passion is high like Harry Kane when he scores. Or when Lloris makes a world-class save. We got Hollie running the mid every game. Settle down, stick around, share your thoughts with the panel. And make sure you're subscribing to the channel. Coys.
Hello and welcome to another Hollie's Hotspurs live. We're not in high spirits this week compared to last week, as we have witnessed Spurs lose 4-1 to Leicester away from home. Honestly, I'm still baffled. But with me tonight to discuss everything, I'm joined by two fabulous guests. Luke, welcome back to the podcast, my friend. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. A little bit tired. Safe to say the Super Bowl was a lot more exciting than Spurs. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, definitely. I did not stay up and watch the Super Bowl, but I did look at the score this morning, and yeah, it looked like it was a good game.
Yeah, it was decent. Not so much like Spurs, where it was a 4-1 thrashing, but there we go. Never mind. But it's great to have you back on the channel, Luke. And we are also joined by Harry, where actual fact, both of these guys are on the Park Lane podcast. Make sure you check that out at the end. And Harry, how are you, my friend? Welcome to your debut on the channel.
Hi, thank you, Hollie. Thank you for having me on. Pleasure to be here. I'm excited.
Yeah, it should be good. Like I say, we've got a lot to discuss tonight, bearing in mind the scoreline. But no, it's great to have you here, Harry. Welcome to everybody else that is tuning in as well. Hello, hello. I think you're all here for a good therapy session, which is strange because obviously after beating City 1-0, Luke, you think we'd be talking about a different story, wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would do, but then you wouldn't be talking about Tottenham Hotspur, would you? Because, you talk about one game where we played brilliantly, I thought. We pressed, we worked hard. I know you've done a whole show on that. And then, we look at Saturday, 3:00, and it just atrocious, wasn't it? Every single area of the park was just awful, in my opinion. I don't think anyone had a good game.
No, I think you're right. And this is the thing that I can't get my head around, Harry, because there are a few players that obviously had been swapped in because we had to make changes. It was literally the same players that were playing against City that were playing against Leicester.
That's the thing. It doesn't make any sense. And I think you go from the best performance, probably the best performance of the season against City, to probably what is the worst performance against Leicester. So you go from extreme high to an extreme low, which doesn't make sense. It's surprising as well. We had Conte back. You thought, they played for him against City. Perhaps this will have even a better effect. But I don't know what happened. No words to describe it really. But it's a real high to a real low.
No, and you made a valid point because obviously, like you said, Harry, Conte was back, Luke, and you would have thought, obviously, after, like Harry said, putting in a shift against City, you'd think it's all right. He's back on the touchline, his presence there. You think the boys would pick themselves up for Leicester?
Seems like they pick themselves up more for Stellini, doesn't it, than Antonio Conte? It's a worrying trend with Conte. I'm going to try not to get on his back too much because, as everyone said, he's had a hard year, and obviously, he's just come back from surgery and whatnot. So I'm not going to get on his back too much. But it's a worrying trend under Antonio Conte. And for the phrase that everybody always uses, which is an Antonio Conte team is usually a lot better than that. And Antonio Conte is usually a lot better than this. And, we can look and we can talk about the board and we can talk about, all the various factors that might make it so that we are rubbish, right? But in actual fact, there was nothing in that game that I saw that he did to try and salvage anything from it. And it seems to be, when we're getting beat this season, and when we seem to, we've already lost, anyone can say that, right? But when you look like 60, 70 minutes and you think we're never getting back in this game, the subs that come on, and, okay, we can blame the board for not backing Conte, not buying the best players, having the same old shit, that we've had for however long. But he never does anything, never tweaks the tactics, never thinks, do you know what, we'll go forward at the back and we'll stick on another attacker. He never does anything to try and salvage it. And that's a worrying factor for me.
No, I think you make some valid points. Obviously, I know sometimes me and you don't see eye to eye with the board, this, that, and the other, but it is true in terms of, okay, yeah, Conte's just come back from illness. And the thing that's really winding me up at the moment, you might disagree with me, Luke, but it's the fact that people are saying, Harry, if if Stellini was running the game, we would have won. And that for me, I don't understand, because yes, like Luke said, I think he did put a good shift in against City, but he was under direction from Conte. This is where I'm like really baffled, because like Luke says, he doesn't really do anything in the game to change the game. But Stellini, I don't think would have done any different, because he was under direction of Stellini. Of Conte. Sorry, I don't really get it.
Well, yeah, that's what I thought. It just seems really odd, doesn't it? That we go from that extreme high to the extreme low. So yeah, it just completely baffles me, to be honest with you. But like Luke said, with Conte, I don't think he ever has like a plan B or something to change the game. I think he's got a few players that can impact the game that we had on the bench. Latest one being Dan Juma, the latest addition to the squad. But didn't left it probably too late to use him. But I would say that Conte probably got tactically outclassed from what I saw on Saturday, which is sad really. But he never has a plan B, and I think not just Conte, but I think it's the thing with these elite managers that they can never accept their mistake, and never come out and admit it, which is frustrating. And there's never that. Whenever we're losing the game or something's go wrong, there's never any hope we can get back into it, because Conte won't sit there and admit he's got this wrong, which, for me as a manager, you've got to do.
No, you do make some valid points. I mean, at the start of the season, I was thinking, okay, I think it was the Bournemouth game that really sticks out for me. I thought we lost that game and we somehow came back from behind.
Yeah,
and it's weird that there's some games we do all right, and then Leicester, I just honestly, Leicester's a really weird trend, I think, in terms of it came from nowhere. I just don't understand it. But Luke, obviously, we'll talk about the start 11. Obviously, it was Pedro Porro's debut game. What do you kind of make of his first appearance in the Spurs shirt?
Yeah, do you know what? I'm not going to get on his back. I don't think he had a great game, to be honest. I think that he struggled against Harvey Barnes. But then, you can look at the likes of Tanganga next to him. You've got somebody who rarely plays next to somebody who I don't even know if Porro speaks great English to begin with. And we talk about this, me and Harry, actually, on Saturday, about why players are in certain positions based on the language that they speak and the ability to be able to converse to each other. So I don't know if that made too much difference. But look, I'm not going to get on his back. But one of the things I did say about Pedro Porro is, before he came to Spurs, there was a really good point that I made about, if I do say so myself, but it's all about who is to blame if Porro doesn't do well at Spurs. And I'm not starting this trend, right, that Porro is going to be rubbish after one game, but we blame Levy and the board for not backing managers when clearly he wanted Porro. If Porro doesn't work out and Conte stays, who's to blame for that? But going back to Porro's debut, there could be games where he's absolutely fantastic and bosses it, and there could be games that he's awful. Right wing back, it's never been easy for Spurs anyway. Harvey Barnes is a good player on that side, and I think Harry's right. I think, annoyingly, Antonio Conte got outclassed by Brendan Rodgers somehow.
I mean, that's the thing, because obviously I'm not Emerson's biggest fan, but Harry, do you think it was maybe a wrong mistake, considering how well Emerson's been playing, to drop him out and put Pedro Porro in?
Yeah, I did. I think we had the discussion, didn't we, Luke, on Saturday, whether it's right to put Porro in. I think we all kind of came to the conclusion that Emerson has been good, stepped up recently, fighting for his place. And I seriously don't know why Conte's thrown him in, like Luke said, up against a good player, against Harvey Barnes, just thrown him in there unexpectedly. Surely the new signing, you'd introduce him from the bench, I would have thought anyway. So it just feels a bit unfair, I think, to Emerson, because you think about it, he's been really bad at times, especially at the start, the season. At times the season's been really bad, that he's played and Conte's consistently backed him, if you like. But now he's stepped up. In Emerson's view, he's now lost his place, temporarily lost his place. So it must be a bit frustrating for me. But I don't know why he needed to change that team from City. Porro's a great signing. I want to see him as our first choice right wing back. But up against Leicester, it's never going to be an easy game. Stick with Emerson, who's been good recently. And if it's the right situation to do so, and introduce Porro on the bench. And I'd also like to say with that, from watching Match of the Day highlights, Porro looked like it was against 2v1. For example, so that's where Conte's got to come in surely and do something about it. Drop maybe Kulusevski deeper, maybe bring them both on, one in front of another. He's got to do something about that, because every time Leicester went forward, it was a 2-on-1. It looked like anyway, and that's where they were causing the most damage. So I can't really blame Porro, his debut. Some fans that get straight on his back. I'd put that actually more on Conte, and I'm someone who defends Conte a lot, but I would put that mainly on Conte for throwing him in unexpectedly.
No, I think you make some valid points, Harry. I don't know. For me, it's like you say, we all want to see Pedro Porro. We all want to see him start. We obviously know that. I mean, lots of people are under the impression that Emerson isn't the one for that right back position. But you can't discredit him for what he's done recently. But yeah, it just seemed too soon. But then I'm also thinking, if he didn't start Pedro Porro, lots of Spurs fans have been picking up a fuss. So it's a very hard medium to try and figure out. But I'll stick with you, Harry, because in terms, I know Luke's mentioned it, but Tanganga, for me, that was such a sus kind of way to put him in. I was thinking, oh, surely Sanchez is going to be playing this game because we've got no Romero. I was just very baffled with that. Were you baffled by it too?
Yeah, it's very, very, very surprised. I think, Luke, again, we had this discussion Saturday, and we were saying we don't really want to see see Sanchez, but it looked, Sanchez would make sense. Tanganga, someone who's suffered injury problems and hasn't played enough, and I don't think is ready, or maybe ready at all, but certainly not ready yet for that high level. So Sanchez would have made more sense, although I would have never felt comfortable with him. Perhaps he should have gone with Davis and Lenglet, kind of push Dyer across maybe. But it was odd, again, throwing Tanganga in, another player thrown in. He hasn't had many starts. And one thing that is strong about Leicester is their attack. We highlighted this again, Luke, the likes of Tielemans, Maddison, Barnes, Iheanacho's in good form. So to throw, again, another defender in like Tanganga, who hasn't played a lot, it baffles me, really. It's the wrong game to do so.
No, I think you're valid points again. And in terms of, like we've kind of said, again, Sanchez worries me. But like you said, you feel a bit more confident because Sanchez always tends to have a good game when he's just thrown in and he has to do a job rather than a run of games. But look, I know Frankie's here saying, is it time for a back four? Now with Conte, I don't think that's going to happen. But I know you've touched on it before. Is that maybe something we should look towards? Or now we've got Pedro Porro, that wing back position is going to pretty much be the formation we always play.
So I'll ask myself a question, right? Which is like, what are people on Twitter always saying about Spurs, right? Always saying that the players that play in our back three, let's say, are still the same players, are still the same rubbish that were there when Poch was there, when Mourinho was there, and so on, right? You change it to a back four, and you play Porro, even next season, Udogie, along with Romero, and a top quality left-footed centre-back, that's a completely different back four. That's a completely different back line, and that's a back line that has none of these people that we're talking about, right? But, to go off that game and say we should go to a back four, like, we've never had a solid back five that is good enough to do that job. So that will only be told over time. Under Conte, like 100% not. Like, that's not going to happen. But to play a back three of Ben Davis, Eric Dyer, and Japhet Tanganga, my thoughts on Tanganga. I do like him. I don't think he's ever going to be good enough for Spurs, but I do prefer him like at a right back position or somewhere like that. I just think he's much better. Probably because he has less to do in terms of a defensive display when he plays as a centre back or a right centre back. He's a lot more open to making mistakes, and I think that with him and, as we've already mentioned, him and Porro, I think it was like just a disaster, to be honest. But I also agree with what Darren said in the comments about it was too soon for Antonio Conte to come back. Sorry, a bit further back, but he looked like a ghost. Like, he even saw him walking on the plane today. Like, what is he doing? Like, just take some time off and just, I can understand, right? But it's a bit like, rumors about Antonio Conte not wanting to sign a new contract, and people were saying, we'll just get rid of him now. But you still see the animation on the touchline before. Obviously, he had to go for his surgery and whatnot.
Yeah.
But now it's a completely different story. It's not about, wanting to be there. It's about mentally being able to be there. And for me, I still think it's far too early for him to be back. But I suppose maybe he thinks that maybe he's too egotistical to stay off. I don't know.
Yeah, it is different. Like I said, it's just very strange in terms of the position we're in at the moment. So yeah, I don't really know what to take with the whole Conte thing at the moment. It is very confusing. But obviously it wasn't all doom and gloom, Harry, because we did manage to score the first goal. So we'll talk about that for a little bit. Again, Perisic with a wonder corner. It comes into the box and then obviously Bentancur manages to tap it in. We'll get into the Bentancur sad news later on. But it was great, wasn't it? So obviously first, again, come out the blocks and actually do something and get the goal.
Yeah, and I pointed out Saturday, I thought that the first goal would be crucial in that game. Turns out it wasn't typical, but I always think against Leicester, a goal would make them have to come out and leaving them defensively exposed. And we know of Leicester's defensive troubles, like us, to be honest, this season. So I think getting that first goal is important. We got it early as well through Bentancur. It's the perfect start, in a good place going into the game. Check the score 1-0 up. I thought perfect. We should be okay. And then to look next, and we're 2-3-1 down was just unbelievable that it can happen. But to be honest with you, should have expected it looking at that back line, like with the likes of Tanganga starting, and if you look at Leicester's attacking players and compare it to our defence, then they're always going to score, and that's the reality. But yeah, it's just baffles me how we actually started to score now in the first half, starting to take leads, but now we can't hold on. So it's just typical Spurs, isn't it?
It really is. There's no middle ground at the moment with Spurs. There's always one extreme to the other. And like Harry said, Luke, it literally went from bad to worse because obviously I think Mendy scores that absolute wonder strike, which I don't think Foster really could have done much about. And then we go and concede again within, I think it was 2 minutes. So what do you make of it all?
Foster didn't shine himself in any glory whatsoever, did he? He looked like a goalkeeper that went into retirement and then came out of retirement for a game just to see how he felt. And it was just, everything was just so lackluster. That's a performance you would expect from the Leicester goalkeeper because he is championship level. And we didn't even try and test him, rather than even look at, we'll probably go on to it, but the Iheanacho goal where... What is Eric Dyer doing? But anyway, we'll go on to that. He literally just stops and places it in the far corner. It's like Forster isn't good enough to get down. He isn't quick enough to get down and get the ball from the corners. And that's all they train on, right? When you see them warming up before the game and they throw the balls down and they have to dive and all the rest of it, you've all seen the warm-ups. That's number one of a goalkeeper. Make sure you're quick enough to get down. But I just thought, the first goal is an incredible strike. I think I heard a stat that guy hadn't scored in 190 games or something.
Something ridiculous.
And then scored an absolute worldie. You can't do anything about that. But yeah, it wasn't impressive Forster whatsoever. But we've got to stick with him now because we ain't got anybody else, have we?
No, that brings you on to the next point in terms of Harry. We kind of got to put up with it now. Obviously, with Lloris out, there was lots of people saying it might be a blessing in disguise. Obviously, that was very wrongful to say because now we are left with Forster. I think we tried to get Ben Foster out of retirement, but that's been rejected by the league. But again, I don't understand the point of getting another a retired goalkeeper out from retirement to come and replace someone that's I don't think it's going to be any better, is it? Surely.
No, probably not. It's just sums up Spurs really not planning ahead. Again, we spoke about this, about how that long-term replacement for Lloris should have already come. This is a perfect example. Turning to Fraser Forster, who has had a good career. I respect him. I think he's been a good goalkeeper. Probably still can be a good goalkeeper, but he just can't seem to get down on the floor. He's relying on his legs to get there. It's almost like one of us going in goal, for example. It's just, I don't know, but he just he should have been prepared. As a backup goalkeeper, you've got to prepare yourself for these moments, surely. But yeah, he looked terrible. And that first goal was a fantastic strike from Mendy. But if you look at his positioning, where he starts, whether he can save it or not is another thing. But his positioning is terrible. And I think if Lloris was in goal, then we'd be slating him that he didn't keep that out. I just thought it was really, really poor. And I think Lloris will be a miss. I mean, I don't think obviously more mistakes are coming into his game, but he had a good game, I think, very good game, in fact, against City. And as your captain, he's always going to be a miss. And we've got to put up with Fraser Forster, but fans must get behind him and not get on his back after one game. And you again look at the defence in front of him. I wouldn't individually pick out Forster as the problem. I mean, look at that defence with Tanganga, Davis, Dyer. I mean, I could go on, but yeah, Fraser Forster, you've got to stick with him. It's a scary thought of him playing in the Champions League on Tuesday, but it is what it is. We'll have to see.
Yeah, it really is. And I think I'm glad you mentioned Dyer last because, Luke, I think that's the next person we're going to get onto. Man was doing his best mannequin impression. I actually put that on Facebook and someone said that I was doing a disservice to a mannequin, saying that a mannequin would probably do better.
Yeah,
and I
true.
think I've been slated a few times for picking out players, but I'm sorry, you cannot defend. Well, Dyer can't defend either. You can't defend the player when he's made that many mistakes to back off from his man, not put his body on the line. I didn't understand it, Luke.
Yeah, do you know? I was listening to you talk about that mannequin, and I think he did. When I was watching it, I thought he did his best Harry Maguire impression because his inability to see where the ball is. I'm going to go back to that Iheanacho goal again because at times I'm not going to do the impression right, but at times he's running one way and his head's like the opposite way, like he's spun his entire head round to try and see where the ball. Oh, he just didn't. He was twisting, he was turning, he was backing up. And then it gets to the point where the ball is inside the box. Then he can't stick his foot out. At one point, I think he tries, terribly to stick his foot out. But I just think across that back line as well, like the positioning was just terrible. I don't know if it was for that goal, but it was it was for the other goal when that Wout Fass slide tackle through ball to Iheanacho. And I think Dyer's the only one back, like the furthest one back. Surely as a back three, you need to be in line with each other. You need to have something. I can't even start to, question Eric Dyer's performance because it was Harry Maguire-esque for my liking.
And that's the thing. It's really annoying because you can have those stints of games. I mean, I haven't really had too many problems with Dyer, but then all of a sudden it's capitulated and it's gone to a mess. And it seems to be, Harry, that kind of happens when we don't have our number one centre back, Romero. He seems to be the one that actually directs what's going on at the back, and maybe that was the problem why it looked so crap at the back.
Yeah, I do think that's part of the problem. I think that game just is a perfect example of how important Romero is. For example, like a highlight against City with Romero there, how touch tight he defends and how he leaves, by example, the whole of the back line really touch tight on City. Whereas against Leicester, we gave them 30, 35 yards. I mean, that Iheanacho goal, the Harvey Barnes goal, even Mendy's goal. The amount of space we gave him. And this is something I've been saying since the summer. It hasn't gone down well. It's starting to go down well now, but I do believe that our defence is championship level without Romero, and that difference he makes. Again, Luke, we touched on it Saturday that perhaps Romero hasn't been consistently amazing like the likes of perhaps Saliba or Martinez has. But I do think he makes a big difference and is by far our best defender. But if you look at that defence around Romero, I mean, I don't think many would get into even Leicester's team or any other championship team, and that's always got to be a concern. We can have the best attack in the world, which I think is up there with Son, Kane, Kulusevski, regardless of what form they're in, because class is permanent. But if you look at that defence, it goes from championship defence to one of the best attacks in the league. You've got to get that balance, and I would put that on Levy, ENIC and the board, because two centre-backs in 6 years and one being Rodon, which is a club signing. So surely there's got to be some balance in the team there.
You'd hope that balance would have been sussed out by now, but here we are. We're still waiting for it. But again, Luke, it kind of went from bad to worse as we saw Bentancur limp off, who we've now found out he's pretty much dusted for the rest of the season. So how does that make you feel?
Yeah, I want to touch on Romero because I need to apologise to Romero, to be honest, because on our channel on Saturday, I was a little bit too harsh on Romero. And, I just personally have not seen enough of him in a Spurs shirt to warrant this world class banner that people put on him. But my God, didn't we look shocking without him? So I just think personally, he would play better in the middle rather than on the right. But you need to get that balance right, I suppose, before that. But anyway, back to Bentancur. A few people were texting me and said, "Oh, I think that's an ACL," and I was like, "No, there's no chance." The geezer's just walked off, walked around the edge of the pitch. Either he's stubborn as anything, or our medical team have no clue on what's going on about anything.
Definitely the latter.
Someone that's just done their ACL to just be like, "Oh yeah, you can just walk it off. We'll be all right, no problem." But he's going to be an absolutely massive, massive miss. Not to mention the fact that we've got Champions League football, FA Cup football, and Premier League football to play for still. The fact that when we've played without him, our results without him are shocking compared to our results with him. So, I've no idea what they're going to do in the centre of midfield because Højbjerg playing alongside him does a decent job and allows him to roam a little bit more. But I don't really want to see a Højbjerg without him because I don't trust him too much defensively. So yeah, I'm a little bit concerned.
Only just a little bit. Harry, it means that obviously Sarr and Skip have got to be the ones that step up. But again, that's a massive ask for Skippy that's just come back from a major long injury, and Sarr that's so young.
It's a massive ask because I think isn't Højbjerg suspended for AC Milan? So focusing on AC Milan, it's probably going to be, isn't it, a Skip and Sarr partnership unless Dyer is going to move into defensive midfield. I can't see happening. Or perhaps I don't want to see it happening, but I can't see it happening. But Sarr, the game that he stepped in, I think against Palace, against Arsenal, for example, against Arsenal, the whole team was terrible. Yeah, not quite as bad as that Leicester performance, but terrible, right? Really, really bad. But Sarr was like a shining light through a dark tunnel. He was good. He didn't put a foot wrong. So I'd like to see Sarr play, to be honest with you. But Skip, obviously coming back from an injury, you've got, I think, a lot of players like him. But again, I'll put that on Levy in the ball because you've got not many players to turn to. And perhaps it's time to give someone like Alfie, this is on Conte, Alfie Devine, a chance as well. I know he won't do that, but Conte really doesn't help our situation, like the back four situation, the youth academy situation. But again, with Benson Core, I question our medical team, and it's not the first time I'm going to question them because it'll probably end up being going into next season. The medical team seem to find to make it longer, which I don't know why. But yeah, so lots of issues. Got lots of stubbornness, injuries now. You've got managers not signing a contract. You've got owners who I wouldn't say have the best long-term plan. You've got fans who are unsettled and overreact to the smallest things anyway. So we've got a big problem at the club at the moment. Just as less than a week ago, even a couple of days ago, we looked in the best place we have been all season. So I think that just sums up Tottenham, really.
It really does. An utter mess, to say the least. But obviously, it is straight. Like, we need to wait. We need to hope Skip and Sarr will pop up and do the business. But Luke, could there be potential of us recalling loans? Could that be a thing? Could we see Ndombele trafing about the pitch? Could we see the man behind me trafing around the pitch?
Yeah, I was just about to say that, Holly. Do you know who we need right now?
Do you think that could be a possibility, or
depends if there are clauses in their contracts that allow recalls of loans, right? Because not all players can be recalled depending on how the contracts were, and I don't know, who knows about that. I don't know if they'll panic just yet, but you never know. That, midfield 2 against AC Milan, they aren't in good form, right? But nor are we. So the only positive I can see about Skippy was that when he came on against City, as I was really, really impressed with him. I don't know if you remember, but he did that little flick, flicked it over someone's head, kind of ran on with the ball, showed really good glimpses of a good midfielder. But yeah, I think time for Harry Winks might be on the cards, Holly. Desperate times and all that.
It's best. I mean, look at him. He's glaring at me from behind me. I thought I'd have to get him out the attic, stick him up there for a little bit. But I don't know. It might be. We're probably in that predicament now where we might need to make a tricky decision in terms of bringing a lone person back. But then we didn't have to sell Doherty, did we? We didn't have to send him out on the free. Could have kept him hold of him. But here we go. Harry, before we go, I know that you need to shoot off. I just want to get your kind of thoughts on, obviously, Harry Kane, because as we know, he did manage to break that record. But then Faz, I think his name's Faz, managed to absolutely put him in his pocket against Leicester. It was incredible the way that he shone him out.
Yeah, obviously you've got Kane who broke that all-time record, which is fantastic. As I said, going for that super high to that super low, which is, again, just so Tottenham-like. But yeah, and Faz is someone who's struggled in a Leicester shirt this season. We're talking about a player who got 2 own goals at Anfield and people laughing at him for the rest of the week, for example. So you would have thought someone like Harry Kane would have been able to have a good game against him. But as I said, Brendan Rodgers, I think, tactically outclassed Conte in lots of different ways. Marked Kane out the game. I didn't even see Kulusevski have the ball. Didn't see Kane shoot. Son, did he play? No idea. So all our hopes, that we could get anything out of the game. I think we're marked out the game. But if we constantly defend him, and you look at the whole team around Kane, right? Kane's definitely the best player in there. And I just look at that defence, because of the players that's in there, that attracts players to attack, players to go in behind them. And Kane, is never going to get much of the ball with a defence like we have. That's always going to be under pressure. Obviously, I didn't watch it, so I don't know if he went deep or not and tried to collect the ball. But it's frustrating, really. But everything that Leicester did, they got right, being honest. And they even, did you say if you saw with Castagna, they nearly even tried to gift us a goal. That's how bad we were. So it just sums up us, really. But yeah, it was baffling how every player looked great against City and every player looked shocking against Leicester and non-existent. But
It's a
again,
madness.
it's just so Spurs.
It really is. But no, Harry, thank you so much for jumping on the show last minute for tonight. Can you tell everybody where you can do your thing, where they can find you?
Thank you, Holly. My personal account is there. I'm the founder of Scarfy Spurs Talk, which is an independent fan channel and hub for all the latest transfer news. Now doing weekly live shows, which I'm doing after I leave here, which I'm excited about. Something new as well. You can find me on all socials.
Oh no, don't say he's lagged. Oh no. Is he coming back?
I can do it if
Go
you
on,
want.
carry on, Luke.
So Harry's got a show on at 8 o'clock on his channel, Scarfy Spurs Talk. But more importantly, you can find him on my channel, Part Lane Podcast, every Saturday morning.
I was like, is he going to add that in? I'm sure he's going to add that in at the end. But no, thank you so much, Harry. I'm not gonna boot you rudely. I'm gonna take you out because you might actually jump in at some point randomly. But wish you luck on your show tonight, and thank you for joining us. But yes, Luke, that leads us on, obviously, to the games that we have coming up next. I don't know if we want to talk about them, but here we are. We do have Milan, obviously, on Tuesday. It is away. I know you've briefly touched on it in terms of the fact that they're kind of in okay form. I think they lost to Inter, but obviously won against Turin. So that in mind, and the way we are set at the moment, how are you kind of feeling for that game?
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it brings back, memories against AC Milan. We talk about Gattuso and Joe Jordan, Peter Crouch. There's lots of good memories against AC Milan, but it's never going to be easy. But I've kind of got this good feeling, that when it's a tough game, when we need to pick it up, when we need to really step on it, hopefully this, I've slated Conte a lot in this, but maybe some of it is tactical for tomorrow night. Maybe it is a little bit like, do you know what, we'll rest a few players, the likes of Longley maybe, coming on at left centre back. I'm trying to think who else you might have rested, but even like you might see Emerson Royale having a good game. I've got a good feeling, right? When we play at the San Siro, whether it's Inter, whether it's AC Milan, always seems to be good vibes. So I'm hoping the same for tomorrow night.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think we've all got to need that lift, especially Spurs. And in terms of it, if we manage to get a few goals away from home, it sets us up, obviously, for the return leg. I won't ask for your score prediction. And I know it's probably is really hard to decide who's going to be in that midfield. But for you, obviously, with the likes of Basuma out as well, I totally forgot about. Do you think that potentially Sarr and Skip will be the ones that sit in that midfield? Because I think Harry said that Højbjerg was obviously out for this game as well.
Yeah, I think it has to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't see any other option, Yeah, there's. I'm trying to rack my brains at I don't see him playing like a youth. I don't see it happening. A youth player coming in playing that. I see that happening on the bench. It's just baffling to me, who else could play apart from them two, right?
And
literally is. It's going to be difficult because that, as much as it's a massive cliche, right? But that part of the pitch is the most important. That's where we're going to be able to dictate the play. We're going to be able to collect the ball out of defense. One of the things I really enjoyed about Bentancur is a little bit the same as Moussa Dembele in the sense where he would come and collect the ball, spin, and then be able to then pass it out and make runs and various things in from there, kind of be that little hub to kind of start the attack from. But under that, maybe we see that from Skippy. Maybe he's the one that kind of roams around a little bit more, ventures a bit more forward, and Sarr kind of sits further back. I really, really don't know what we can do because you look at all the players that we sent out on loan during January, and now we're getting injury after injury after suspension after suspension. And we are gonna struggle, but we just have to hope that we get those Champions League vibes back, and Sonny against Borussia Dortmund is kind of coming to mind, at Wembley, and so that's all we can hope for. Let's hope it's that rather than Spurs against Borussia Dortmund under Poch away, where we just got absolutely destroyed, or Mourinho under Leipzig. So.
And I think that's the thing. I think we're kind of all hoping for a bounce back because I think we need one. I just think it'll set us up nicely for the home leg because, again, we've got a run of fixtures in the Premier League coming up as well that aren't going to treat us nicely, especially the way that those teams are kind of performing against the other teams. But sticking with Milan, obviously, they are fifth at the moment. So it isn't, again, going to be a walkover. But I like the fact that you mentioned, obviously, how we're going to see this dynamic of, say, Skip and Sarr if they do start, because I don't think we've seen enough of them this season. I think that's why it's so hard to try and decide how they're going to play. But I know lots of people obviously mentioning Alfie Devine, and I know you said he's probably not going to start, but do you reckon if it comes to a point in the game that we need to mix it up a bit because something's not quite working, could Alfie be that answer? Or again, have we just not seen enough of him?
Maybe, but it might, it reminds me similarly to like Mourinho and Troy Parrott. Those times when Spurs were like, right, he needs to play. We brought him on, then he missed a penalty, and then he was like, that's why I didn't play him type thing. I just don't know, in terms of that with Antonio Conte, like it's going to be really, really, really tricky, right? Because the other midfielder, I suppose, could play, right? Could be Harvey White, but then when I've seen him under Conte, he plays him more as a 10. So I'm baffled. The only thing another positive thing I'm thinking about is could we see the start of a new partnership in the midfield for Spurs? Do you know what I mean? Could these two be able to? They'd have to do it pretty quickly, but do they have the ability to gel and actually force their way into this team? Because we talk about injuries being like a really bad thing, but the other thing should be that these players should be chomping at the bit to get a little run of games, to be able to come in and prove themselves. At least one of them, in that with Basuma and Bentancur being out, one of them has to play. And so it's got to be that, right? It's got to be how can you make a name for yourself? Let's remember, I keep going back to memories now, but let's remember Harry Winks against Real Madrid. As much as people might laugh at that, like that's what people a time when people turn their heads as if to like, wow, this is a good player. And those are the kind of things that we need in this game, and not we need, the other thing is we need to protect Forster as best as we can.
Definitely.
But that's going to start from midfield and work its way back.
Agreed. And you make like you say, obviously I was Winks' biggest fan and then he let me down, but you are right, it is the time for these young players, especially like I said, they've got to be hungry, and I'm sure they will be being young. They are going to want to be biting at the bit to get their chance, and I just hope, like you said, I mean we always see Bentancur and Højbjerg, and don't get me wrong, they are good together, but Højbjerg now and again has his dip in form. Bentancur has a bit of a rough patch, and obviously with them both out for this game, it's time for Sarr, it's time for Skip to set up. But yeah, hopefully Tuesday's a bit more enjoyable. I'm not going to say it's going to be stress-free, but hopefully it is a bit enjoyable. But then straight after that, Luke, we've got West Ham on Saturday, which is even great, isn't it? Because they've managed to get a draw against Chelsea and Newcastle, which isn't filling me with a lot of hope.
Yeah, I know, especially at a time when you heard, West Ham fans go from, we are massive to Moyes out, in a very, very short space of time. Again, it's not a game that I would be worried about. In hindsight, I wouldn't be worried about, the strike force of Antonio, Danny Ings. I didn't know he's fit, but misfiring Scamacca as well. But I struggle to think where we're going to get that creativity and that spark from. And, you look at lots of areas on the pitch, right? And you look at, okay, right wing back, we've got Pedro Porro now. Fingers crossed that works out. But then you look at the left-hand side and you think, well, Perisic is all right. Sessegnon is pretty pants. So then and you look at the back line and you're thinking, well, Romero's good, but Dyer's trash. So it's like, where does all this spark come from? Because for some reason, Sonny, we used to see quite a lot, right? Harry Kane would pick up the ball, play it to Son. He would make a run. maybe we'd cross to Kane. You know, it all seemed to be through them two. But with Sonny's form kind of being up and down, it's meant that Harry Kane hasn't had as much service, and he hasn't been able to provide as much service to Heung-min Son. And I did think against Preston, I'm going on a tangent now, but I did think against
That's
Preston.
right.
I know it's only Preston, but Sonny seemed to look like he was getting back to his form again. He dropped deep, he picked the ball up, he had good control, he was able to shift the ball. He did all those things that you don't really see a lot of Sonny this season. But again, you just don't know because let's look at last season against West Ham when we struggled against them, and seasons before that. And I don't know. It's going to be a tough couple of weeks, but we're going to have to push through it and hope that there's some kind of light at some point, because there's no transfer window to bring anyone in. I highly doubt we'll cancel anyone's loan spell. So it's going to be tricky time.
It's going to be proper rough, isn't it? I mean, honestly, to play Milan away from home and then have a couple of days to get over it and play West Ham. But yes, they're not firing all cylinders, but they're grinding out results, which they weren't doing, obviously, at the start of the season. So it's not going to be an easy one. But yeah, no, I'm never not looking forward to a game. I always say, oh, Spurs are playing again. I'll just stick them on. I'll watch them. But for this time, I'm actually a bit like, I don't know if I want to. So yeah, it's going to be difficult. But no, Luke, thank you for joining me tonight to obviously dissect everything that went on against Leicester and obviously the two games that are coming up. I'm sorry that it's cutting it short, but when you get to the point, it's actually, I don't know what else to talk about really, which is trash. Yeah. So Luke, thank you so much. Where can everybody find you doing your thing?
Yeah, so again, Hollie, thank you so much for having me on, and thanks to everyone for all your comments, because there's some really, really valid points through what everyone said. So appreciate that. Obviously, make sure you're all over Hollie's channel, subscribing, liking, all the rest of it. But if you're interested in following us, we don't clash with Hollie, so you can come and join us. You can be friends with both of us. Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. at Park Lane Podcast on YouTube and all other social media. And if you haven't got anything to do now, I'll be nice to Harry. If you haven't got anything to do, you can jump over to his channel at Scarfy Spurs Talk at 8 o'clock, and he'll have guests on to basically talk about exactly what we've just said. So if you like your double dose of nonsense, then do that.
It's good to get the therapy sessions in when Spurs lose. So no, thank you to everybody that has tuned in today, that's commented, that is going to go back, rewatch this, watch the clips I make later on throughout the week to obviously preview the games coming up. And like Luke said, we all want Spurs to do well. So if you have got the time and you do want to listen to more Spurs opinions, go check out everybody that comes on the show, especially Park Lane Podcast, because 11 o'clock on a Saturday morning is a good time to get your fix before all the games kick off. So make sure you all do that. Hollie's Hotspurs Live obviously be back next Monday with other guests, this, that, and the other. Hopefully to obviously talk about beating Milan on Tuesday and obviously beating West Ham on Sunday. I'm trying to keep high spirits, but there we go. And until next time, come on, you Spurs.